The first thing you notice isn't the sound, but the silence. It is a heavy, suffocating blanket that presses down on your chest, thicker than the coarse wool blanket covering your shivering frame. Usually, the morning in the year of our Lord 1348 begins with the rhythmic clatter of cartwheels on cobblestones, the distant shouting of merchants, and the persistent chime of the matins bell. But today, the air is stagnant. The only sound is the frantic, shallow thumping of your own heart. You open your eyes to a room bathed in a sickly, gray twilight. The fire in the hearth has died down to a pile of cold, white ash, and the damp chill of a London winter has seeped through the timber-framed walls. You try to sit up, but a sharp, stabbing pain shoots through your neck, making your vision swim. You reach up, your fingers trembling, and touch the skin just below your jawline. There, you feel it. A hard, hot lump, the size of a walnut, pulsing with a life of its own. Your blood turns to ice. You don't need a physician to tell you what that is. You've seen it on the baker, on the tanner's daughter, and on the priest who was buried just 2 days ago. It is the swell, the boil, the mark of the great mortality. You are standing on the threshold of the end of the world, and the pestilence has finally come for you. You swing your legs out of bed, the floorboards feeling like shards of ice against your bare feet. The room feels smaller than it did yesterday, the shadows in the corners stretching out like reaching fingers. You call out for your sister, your voice coming out as a dry, pathetic croak. There is no answer. You stumble toward the small, shuttered window and push it open, hoping for a breath of fresh air. But what greets you is the overwhelming stench of decay. It is a thick, sweet, cloying smell that clings to the back of your throat. A mixture of rotting refuse, stagnant river water, and the unmistakable scent of burning flesh. Below, the street is a ghost of its former self. A single pig roots through a pile of discarded rags in the gutter, but there are no people. Doors are barred from the outside, marked with crude red crosses that scream a silent warning to any who pass. "Lord, have mercy upon us," the paint whispers. You realize with a jolt of terror that the house across the way, once home to a family of 6, is now silent. The windows are broken, and a heavy stillness hangs over the threshold like a shroud. You turn back to the room, your mind racing. You need water. Your throat feels as though you've swallowed hot coals. You find the ceramic pitcher on the table, but it's empty, save for a few dead flies floating at the bottom. The desperation begins to set in. You remember the rumors whispered in the tavern before the world stopped turning. They said the air itself had turned to poison, a miasma blown in from the east where the sun rises over lands of spice and heat. Some said it was the alignment of the planets, Saturn and Jupiter meeting in a house of death. Others, the more pious, claimed it was the wrath of God, a divine scourge sent to punish a sinful humanity. You look at the lump on your neck again in the reflection of a polished pewter plate. It has turned a bruised, angry purple. In the Middle Ages, this is your death sentence. There are no antibiotics here, no hospitals, no understanding of germs or fleas or the rats that scurry beneath your floorboards. There is only prayer, and even the heavens seem to have turned a deaf ear to the cries of the dying. You manage to pull on your tunic and boots, every movement a monumental effort. Your joints feel like they are filled with ground glass. You have to find help, or at least find out what has happened to your family. You descend the narrow, creaking stairs, each step echoing through the empty house. In the kitchen, you find your sister. She is slumped over the table, her forehead resting on the wood. For a moment, you hope she is merely sleeping, exhausted from the vigil of the previous night. But as you move closer, you see the dark, mottled patches on her hands, the God's tokens, as the locals call them. They are the internal hemorrhages that signal the final stage. You reach out to touch her shoulder, but your hand stops mid-air. The fear is a physical barrier. If you touch her, do you invite more of the poison into your own veins? Or is it already too late? You realize she isn't breathing. The silence of the house is now explained. You are alone in a tomb. The grief doesn't come all at once. It is suppressed by the sheer primal instinct to survive. You stumble out the front door and into the narrow alleyway. The light is blinding, even though the sky is a dull, leaden gray. You begin to walk, your gait unsteady. You see a man further down the street, dragging a heavy wooden sled. He is wrapped in layers of vinegar-soaked linen, a hood pulled low over his face. He doesn't look at you. No one looks at anyone anymore. Eye contact is a risk. A breath shared is a gamble with the devil. You pass the Church of St. Mary's, and the sight stops you in your tracks. The churchyard is gone, replaced by a massive, gaping trench that stretches nearly the length of the block. Men with scarves tied over their noses are frantically tossing bodies into the pit, layering them like lasagna. A layer of corpses, a layer of lime, a layer of earth. There is no dignity here. No coffins, no final rites, no bells. The sheer volume of the dead has broken the machinery of the church. The consecrated ground is full, and the overflow of the apocalypse is spilling into the streets. You lean against a cold stone wall, gasping for air. Your fever is rising, and the world is starting to tilt. You see a figure approaching from the end of the lane, and for a moment you think you are hallucinating. The figure wears a long black leather coat that reaches the ankles, and a mask with a long, curved beak like a predatory bird. Glass circles cover the eyes, reflecting the gray sky. This is the Plague Doctor, a grim reaper of a different sort. He carries a wooden cane, using it to point at people and keep them at a distance. You try to call out to him, to ask for a remedy, a poultice, anything. He stops and looks at you through those glass orbs. He doesn't come near. He tells you, in a voice muffled by the leather, to go home. He speaks of lancing the buboes, of applying a paste of dried human excrement and crushed lilies, or perhaps sitting in a room filled with the smoke of aromatic herbs. He suggests you buy a piece of true unicorn horn if you can afford it, or perhaps a toad to draw out the poison. You realize, with a sickening clarity, that he knows no more than you do. His beak is stuffed with rose petals and camphor to block out the bad air, but he is just as helpless against the invisible killer as the beggar dying in the gutter. As the doctor moves on, you hear a new sound, a rhythmic, haunting chant. It grows louder, accompanied by the wet, rhythmic thud of leather hitting flesh. A procession of men emerges from around the corner. They are stripped to the waist, their backs a raw, bloody mess of shredded skin. These are the Flagellants. They believe that by inflicting the pains of Christ upon themselves, they can appease God's anger and stop the plague. They sing hymns in a low, mournful drone, swinging whips tipped with iron spikes over their shoulders. People emerge from their houses, falling to their knees in the filth of the street, weeping and begging for mercy. You watch as a woman throws herself at the feet of the lead flagellant, crying out that her children are gone. The desperation is infectious. For a moment, you feel the urge to join them, to find some meaning in the pain, to believe that this suffering has a purpose. But then you see one of the flagellants collapse, his body convulsing, the telltale black marks visible on his ribs. Even the holy are not spared. The plague does not care for your piety. It does not care for your status. It is the great equalizer, turning kings and peasants into the same rotting clay. You turn away from the bloody spectacle and head toward the River Thames. You have a vague idea that if you can get on a boat, if you can reach the countryside, you might be safe. You imagine the green fields of Kent, the fresh air, the distance from the crowded, dying city. But as you reach the wharf, you find it guarded by men with crossbows. The city is under a primitive quarantine. No one goes out and no one comes in. The ships moored in the river are bobbing silently, their crews dead or fled. You see a body floating face down in the dark, oily water, bumping gently against the pilings. The realization hits you like a physical blow. There is no escape. The plague is not just in London. It is in Paris, in Florence, in Kaffa, and in the tiny mountain villages you've never even heard of. It has traveled on the backs of rats, hidden in the fur of black stowaways on merchant galleys, and it is spread across the continent like a wildfire in a dry forest. The afternoon sun begins to dip below the horizon, casting long, distorted shadows across the empty marketplace. You find yourself sitting on the steps of a merchant's house, your strength almost entirely gone. Your vision is blurring, the edges of the world fraying into darkness. You watch a rat scurry across the cobbles, its black eyes glinting in the twilight. You don't know that the flea on that rat's back is the architect of this ruin. You don't know about Yersinia pestis. To you, this is a supernatural event, a tearing of the fabric of reality. You start to lose track of time. You think of the world you knew just a month ago, the smell of fresh bread, the sound of children playing in the square, the comfort of a warm bed and a full belly. It feels like a dream from another lifetime. Now, the world is a charnel house. You hear the distant sound of a bell, but it isn't for a service. It is the death bell, ringing continuously, a monotonous tolling that marks the passing of 1,000 souls. A cart rumbles nearby. You hear the call that has become the anthem of the age. "Bring out your dead!" It is a weary, hoarse shout. You see the cart pass, piled high with bodies, limbs tangling together in a macabre dance. A hand hangs over the side, the fingers stiff and pale. You wonder if that will be you by morning. The men pulling the cart are hardened, their faces expressionless. They have seen too much to feel anything anymore. They stop a few yards away to pick up a bundle wrapped in a tattered sheet. They don't pray, they don't linger. They simply toss the bundle onto the pile and move on. The efficiency of it is the most terrifying part. Life has become cheap. A human being is now just a piece of refuse to be cleared away before it taints the living. You feel a strange sense of detachment. The pain in your neck has gone from a sharp stab to a dull, throbbing ache that seems to vibrate through your entire skull. Your skin feels like it's on fire, yet you are shivering uncontrollably. You begin to hallucinate. You see your parents, long dead, standing at the end of the alley, beckoning to you. You see the danse macabre, the skeletons of bishops and beggars dancing hand in hand through the ruins of the city. It's a vision of the ultimate truth of 1348. Death is the only thing that remains. You try to remember a prayer, but the words slip through your mind like water. You realize that the social order has completely collapsed. The law is gone. The shops are looted. Parents are abandoning their children, and husbands are leaving their wives to die alone in the dark. The fear of the infection has proven stronger than the bonds of love. It is a lonely way to die, surrounded by millions, yet utterly isolated by the terror of a touch. As the stars begin to poke through the haze of smoke and gloom, you find a small measure of peace. The panic has burned itself out, replaced by a heavy, terminal exhaustion. You look up at the sky and wonder if the stars are looking down on a world that is simply ending. You think about the sheer scale of it. In some cities, half the population is already gone. In others, there aren't enough living left to bury the dead. You are a witness to the greatest catastrophe in human history, a moment where the heartbeat of civilization nearly stopped. You close your eyes, the sound of the death cart fading into the distance. You feel the cold of the stone steps seeping into your bones, but it doesn't matter anymore. The fever is a warm tide, pulling you away from the stench, the fear, and the silence. But wait. Your eyes snap open. A sudden, violent jolt of adrenaline surges through you. You hear a sound, not a bell, not a cart, but a cough. It's coming from inside the house behind you. A small, weak sound. A child? You realize that even in the heart of the nightmare, there is a flicker of something else. You look at your hands. The black spots aren't there yet. The lump on your neck is agonizing, but you are still breathing. You remember hearing a story of a man who had the swellings and lived, the boils bursting and the fever breaking. A 1 in a million chance. The instinct to survive, which you thought had vanished, flares up again with a desperate intensity. You force yourself to stand, your legs buckling, your breath coming in ragged gasps. If you can find water, if you can keep the fever down, if you can just last until the morning. You begin to crawl back toward your home. Every inch is a battle. The street feels miles long. You pass a fountain that has run dry, its stone basin filled with dead leaves. You reach your door and pull yourself over the threshold. The house is dark, the air thick with the scent of your sister's passing. You find a small crust of bread in the larder, hard as a rock, and you suck on it to moisten your mouth. You collapse on the floor near the cold hearth. You aren't dead yet. And as long as you are breathing, the story isn't over. You realize that if you survive this, the world you return to will be unrecognizable. The old ways are dying with the people. The power of the lords, the grip of the church, the very structure of how humans live together, it is all being melted down in the furnace of the plague. The night is long, filled with the sounds of the dying city, the distant screams, the barking of stray dogs, the endless tolling of the bells. You drift in and out of a fever dream, watching the shadows flicker on the walls. You think about the farmers in the fields who won't be there to harvest the grain, the sailors whose ships will drift aimlessly until they wash up on deserted shores, the scholars whose books will remain unread in empty libraries. The Black Death is not just a disease, it is a great reset. It is a brutal, horrific pruning of the human tree. And you are just one leaf, clinging to a branch in the middle of a hurricane. Morning light eventually begins to bleed through the cracks in the shutters. It's a pale, sickly yellow, but it is light nonetheless. You reach up to your neck. The lump is still there, but it feels different, softer, perhaps. Or maybe you are just numb. You hear a bird sing, a single, clear note that pierces through the heavy silence of the street. It is the most beautiful thing you have ever heard. It is a reminder that the world goes on, indifferent to the tragedies of men. You realize that survival in the time of the Black Death isn't about bravery or even health. It's about sheer, stubborn luck. You are a survivor of the apocalypse, a ghost walking through a world of ghosts. You pull yourself up to the window one more time. The street is still empty, the red crosses still guard the doors, and the stench of the pits still hangs in the air. But the sun is rising. You have made it through the first night. You don't know if you will survive the next one, or the one after that. You don't know that this plague will return again and again for centuries, or that it will eventually kill upwards of 50 million people. All you know is the cold air in your lungs and the hard wood beneath your feet. You are alive in 1348, and for now, that is enough. You turn away from the window and begin the slow, painful process of lighting a fire. You have to keep going. Because if you don't, there will be no one left to remember the names of those who were lost. You are the POV of history, the witness to the end of an era, and the beginning of a dark, uncertain future. The pestilence is all around you. But for this moment, in this house, the silence is finally broken by the sound of a single, flickering flame. The fire catches, the small orange glow reflecting in your eyes. You watch the smoke curl up toward the rafters. You think about the people who will come after you, centuries from now. Will they understand what it was like? Will they be able to imagine the terror of a world where death was invisible and everywhere? You realize that your struggle, your fear, and your survival are now part of the fabric of the human story. You are not just a victim. You are a testament to the resilience of life in the face of absolute darkness. The Black Death may have claimed the world, but it hasn't claimed you yet. You sit by your small fire, a solitary soul in a dying city, waiting for the next bell to toll and wondering what the new world will look like when the clouds finally part. The weight of the silence returns, but it's different now. It's not the silence of the grave, but the silence of a pause. The world is holding its breath. You lean your head against the wall and close your eyes, listening to the crackle of the wood. You are a survivor of the greatest horror humanity has ever known. You have seen the face of the great mortality and lived to tell the tale, even if there is no one left to listen. The year is 1348. The plague is at your door, and you are still here. As the morning progresses, you hear the distant sound of the carts again. The cycle begins anew. The "Bring out your dead" echoes through the streets, a grim reminder that the harvest is not yet finished. You look at your sister's body, and you know what you must do. You must find the strength to carry her to the door, to give her to the men with the carts, to let her go into the great pit with the thousands of others. It is a cruel necessity, a final act of love in a world that has run out of room for grief. You stand up, your body screaming in protest, and you begin the work of the living. You move through the shadows of your home, a ghost among ghosts, doing what must be done to see another sunset. This is your life now. This is the reality of the Black Death. There are no heroes, only those who endure. And as you reach for the door latch, you take one more deep, shuddering breath, grateful for the simple, agonizing pain of being alive.
If you liked this video, please hit the like and subscribe button for more.